Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's live stream. I want to speak about an idea that I wonder if in my lifetime it's going to be attempted. And this idea is something that I wonder if the species will perceive, will see before its extinction or not. That means I'm just wondering, will it ever happen in history or not? So pretty much this vision I have of the civilization, whether it occurs in my lifetime or happens 1,000 years from now, whatever time span we can give it, this incidence requires a new self, as if my mind found a way to animate a potential of the species. Now, let me tell you how it all began. Usually I explain the title at the beginning, but for this episode, I'm going to build up to it. Right now, if you had a time machine and you went back in time and showed off today's technology to ancestors who could not comprehend it, they would freak out. Similarly, if there was somebody to come back from, like, let's say you went like 2,000 years back into the past to go surprise that ancestor with 2019 technology. Now, let's say in the someone from the year 3019 suddenly comes to 2019, and that person comes to us and shows off technology that we let's say we cannot comprehend, as if like a couple 100 decades need to in some sense occur before we can even understand the science that was used to build their technology. Let's say the guy who came back from 319 2019. So what I'm trying to say is that we will have a sort of similar astonishment, and the world is too occupied by its past. For me, people who are sacrificing the future for the past are cowards. They are cowards. Do you know how many cowards there are in this civilization? Because courage will die if hope is not in sight. If something new is not possible, even the bravest warriors will drop their sword. We all live for, believe it or not, a potential state of mind. All human beings are doing this. They're existing for potential states of mind. You know, even you being drawn to this talk could be of that, but that's normal. I'm saying that's kind of in the fabric of our design, that we do not just want things, we want to also be in certain ways. Okay? So for me, I realized if that dude came back from 2019, I don't know why I keep saying 2017. From 2019 came to 2019, we would be freaking fools to him. We would be savages. We would be not as evolved, not as mindful. And when we look back in history, you know what the future just puts its hands over its mouth to like just be like, oh shit, the past totally missed out on this. And what it was that in any moment of history, there was an opportunity to unravel from the unknown a new way of knowledge. For me, I realized the activity is not physical. We do not have a physical problem in this existence, because if we were to satisfy all physical problems, then we would have to figure out what the mind is doing. The mind, believe it or not, requires problems to be a solver. Okay? So what that means is, in order for you to be a human, you require a world of complexity to simply navigate in and wonder. It is the allowance of the complex. What I recognize is that hell was a state of mind where the person was not allowed to see anymore. For me, it's very tragic, believe it or not. I feel a person's belief can make their experience of the moment into hell. I believe that. The reason I believe it, because it is a game. Language is a game. It doesn't have firm precision of accuracy once it enters your unconscious. That means there's states of the mind. The mind generates certain phenomena. People who speak, they feel that they are approaching it with the egos, with the same ego they have, that they want to succeed in a world where they got to work hard in. When you make work hard more important than working smart, people would just want to feel good in what they're doing. They won't care for the actual contribution or how far their intentions echo in this life. And trust me, it's one of those things, like certain businessmen say, that when you start a business, at first you have a certain model of how to run it. But eventually, as the business becomes public and in some sense goes through various cycles, suddenly the life of the business begins, and it has to adjust with how it happens in some sense. Okay, how life happens for it. So now to get to the point, what was that vision? What was that inspirational thing that I saw? Why did I tell you this time travel story? The reason is because I want to let you know that if we were to look at ourselves from greatness, we would not be great. Okay, so we would in some sense be just like how we look at our ancestors, our early ancestors, and we're like, look at those savages. Similarly, we are again the savages to the future. So I am trying to wonder, it's not about world peace per se, it is how much clarity is accessible to the child that opens its eyes. How much is the child actually seeing the world, or still caught in the world of its own romance? You see, there's different forms of love. That's why they say true love, because there could be false love. The reason is that the false love could be one-sided. You see, there's many relationships where I believe love is present, but I don't feel the people in the relationship love each other. You see, it's like they love themselves more than the other. This is why the other's value is okay to sabotage. For me, it's all about human mind. The human mind, in some sense, organizes itself. So pretty much all human beings have this sort of biomechanical like I can't say biomechanical when I fit the comment, but like this, our intelligence organizes itself. It has organized itself through objective, through matter, through particles. So we are a body right now, okay? We are some body, and but there is the mind, and the mind exists through unknown space. Just like how scientists don't know all the forces of the world, because if they knew all the forces of nature, there would be no need for a method to explore anymore if you know everything. So you see, it's science's task is to never define the unknown. Religion's task was to only define the unknown. You see? There's states of mind. It's so incredible. People think that, like any person looking at this on this planet, looking at another person and just seeing a person is you're not looking deeply. We are worlds behind our eyes, and these various worlds, they move. As they move, it gives the illusion of thoughts. Behind your eyes, you don't understand. Your attention is holding itself in two ways. It is holding itself through subjects, and it's holding itself through objects. The educational system of the world currently, I'm speaking 2019, our educational system should have been where I'm saying it will be before I was born. The issue is physical survival. You got to understand, knowledge is not a physical pursuit. Did you know that? That means this is why the internet is very valuable, because it's all about what sort of data your eyes get exposed to or the world reveals to you. For me, it's like any child who gets the archetype of the prophet, the messenger, some sort of notion is told to them, usually religious kids at a young age, they know the prophet of their religion, their name. Okay, even the most foolish people know. You see, it's like, but what I'm telling you is that there's different rooms you enter. My personal position is that I have seen language change my mind so many times. I'm no longer convinced that language is my mind. I use it. There's something else here. That means the person's using the car is not the car. So the intelligence that is driving through the language, bringing it in the stage of attention, like in this current recorded spotlight. So what I'm trying to do is kind of tell you that there's deeper dimensions. So if there are deeper dimensions, you know what that would mean? That would mean our knowledge has to be false. What that means is if there's more to the house, like let's say you go to a house and you see all the rooms, but suddenly you realize there was another floor of the house you didn't see. Or let me give a better example. You go to a museum and you don't see the top floor of the museum, you only see the bottom floor of the museum. Then somebody asks you, did you go everywhere in that museum? You can no longer respond. You were there, but you weren't fully there. And I find life to be something like this, but the there and the other, like you see, the mind does not just create uh, senses of self, it creates senses of world. This is why your imagination seems to be like a duplicate of the more malleable version of the world in an invisible room. So pretty much that vision was of some sort of kind of renaissance occurring where it's a new action that begins to echo in pretty much the species ear. It's very funny. Sometimes we are individual beings, but I feel our experiences are shared. Literally, like how some editors in film companies, the film company, hires like many editors. So all these editors are working together. So they have a shared account on their software, like they use primarily Avid Media Player. And so the Avid Media Player has an option where you can share accounts. So you can share the same data. And I feel behind our eyes, we're a field of intelligence. In front of our eyes, we're the particle moving in that field. That's why free will exists, because we feel our attention is the God of our thoughts. It's the God of our experience. We feel we are a driving existence. But it's very funny. We only subjectively are like gods. We are like a mind that has realized it is not a body, but it has been inspired by the body to, in some sense, be the mind. So it's like you're not your parents, but you came from your parents. So in some sense, one can say, as the child, even let's be this, you know, I'll take it a bit further. Let's say that the child is born as a blank slate. Let's get rid of any notion of any sort of past data influencing the child. The child is only being influenced by its DNA, and it's like a blank slate in the world. Let's assume. I don't believe that's true, but let's say it. I feel the mainstream acknowledges that way. Children are born like empty pieces of paper, and the world writes on them who they should be or what they should be. And it's very important because the child's free will exists in the domain of awareness. So it depends on how much you're aware of. So knowledge is not per se a regurgitation of structures of complex ways that language was put beside one another. Knowledge is knowing how this world works. So I find that my approach to my care, the reason there was a moment where I didn't care for scribes. You know who scribes are? Scribes are like like the same way editors in the film industry don't get that much recognition. For example, in some sense, uh, how would I say it? Think of it this way. Intelligence is some sort of movement. Okay, this movement has been, in some sense, crystallizing, becoming more complex. First, we were simple atoms. Now we are people. Now, where are these people going? So once we have a sort of intent to wonder about ahead of our time, we will actually recalibrate how in the present we are experiencing time. So the past and future, they, you know what the greatest value they can give you? They can just show you the intensity of how your mind generates, not generates, but accepts reality as itself in the moment. Do you see, when people went to study their mind, they got shocked. This was the first wave of enlightenment, where they were like, oh my God, the mind is not an object. I can't just put it on the table. I can't just take my mind off, put it on the table and study it. Okay? So the mind was an unknown connection of sight as existence. It was the intersection of awareness with matter, consciousness with matter. You know, it's as if awareness, it's awareness before there's matter. When there's matter, then it becomes consciousness. Then there's a sort of individualness in the picture to exist. The picture is not just a collective soup of energy. It is a unique design-based phenomena. And so it's kind of like, it's very fascinating because this life doesn't work like an engine. In some ways I was thinking, okay, could this whole existence of ours be simulated? So could it be an engine, like just like how a movie projector projects a movie on the wall? Could it be that the natural world is projecting a hollow free will as the self? And then I wondered and I realized, no, the world is too intelligent for that. The world is too intelligent to be empty. That's my greatest finding. That was honestly my greatest hope. I realized that it can't be empty. The room can't be empty. It is, like, it seems empty, but behind my eyes, how can emptiness see? So it's very funny. It's as if, think of it this way, that there's many ways a person can be alive on this planet. He can physically be alive, or the extensions of his mind could be alive. Pretty much every writer we find in the world is that. So why does the future require us to have a global integrative approach to the human being? This is pretty much the idea. And I believe, whether we like it or not, our senses of self are changing. If we all followed our desire, let's say for a day, every human being was like, okay, let's forget morality, ethics, let's just do our savage animal stuff. Okay, let's just do our desires, the things we think we have to have. Okay, the way our mind is making the world, like a person, you see, desire and anger bring the same kind of response. In some sense, they are in some sense the same state. They are both a sort of inner ideological blindness and conviction that the inner reality is the only reality. An angry person, it doesn't matter how much you tell him the rational thing. He is so convinced by his own world for the value of all that he sees that he's acting based on it. This is why I have the saying, and I'm saying it: any person who gets angry is a fool. It's you're a fool. You are in the foolish state of mind. You're too convinced by what you see, and you're acting savagely based on it. So that becomes the dexterity, the sophistication, the kind of, every child born is going to have their own style of how thoughts appear and approach them. It is just how much you cultivate, how much you care for yourself to even study it, to see it. I see students kind of, it's very funny. It's like every human being goes through this. It's the development of self-value in history, in time. So as you are alive, think of it first this way: the yogic position is much more mature because it acknowledges truths that the current reality has to avoid, because if it doesn't, it will not exist in the same way. So just like I can tell you, it's kind of the human being's knowledge is just like the parent not telling the child the more important info news, because the child cannot process it. Okay, so when you speak to children, there's if the child is truly listening, you speak to the child's greater self. You literally envision a great being there. You envision somebody, you don't know who they're gonna be. When I see children, I'm like, oh my God, one of these people can rule the world one day. I'm like, one of these people can be president. I mean, who is the president now? It was a child on some block, you know, going to the grocery store, buying something. Like, I remember my childhood, and I remember that what always wondered, what was power. What was not power? What was the power that all human beings' attention went to? For me, it's very funny. So many people have a negative context of power. They feel like somebody has too much power. You give a fool a big stick, many people get hurt. You give a intelligent, intellect, like a smart person a big stick, and there's a chance they might destroy themselves. They might hurt themselves. But you give a big stick to a wise man, and he will break that big stick and build a new tool. That is what I'm trying to ask our civilization, and I'm asking every person who's listening to these talks. Every day happens once, and we all get bedazzled, enchanted by stories of our own self-conceived future. So the species has to have a timeout of its belief systems and this constant behavioral bias it will forever carry as a stench of its ignorance. We have to recognize a new human being is coming into formation, because the environment that defines where the human being finds his definitions is changing. You can take the greatest, imagine there's a kid, I believe all children are extremely talented, but they never find the world where they never find the world where their talent can be activated. That means I believe human beings are dying with great dormant potential, never touching on it, never embracing it, because they feel the world is in one way, so they can only behave in a certain way. It's too fixed. The self-idolization of the idea of self, it's gone too far. Okay, it's like, that's why I'm saying, unfortunately, I thought this would have been gone by the year 2010, but it wasn't. Let's say even 2012 this should have occurred. That's why it's the death of the world. It's the death of the just self. It is the death of the past self. So what would a global integrative approach to the human being be? And this is the unique thing. This is what the UN cannot acknowledge, but children in the playground can. The most educated people and intelligent people in the most important places, gatherings in the world, they cannot figure this out, but children, you know, figure this out. And like, they just, in the playground, when they play and they're friendly with one another, they figure it out. That life has to be a game that we can all play. And wars begin when there are people who don't want to let everybody play the game. So what that means is, one thing is that society has to be designed in a certain way where it constantly evolves the story the human being is telling itself. Okay? Science kind of prevented, science, not just science, just any ideology, any ideological system prevents the change of reality. That means the thing about a belief is that it stops you from having any idea thereof. That's it. That's the issue with beliefs. Imagine I say I believe uh, a glass of cold orange juice can, like, you know, like, save humanity. Like, let's say an angry alien comes down, and we give that alien orange juice, a glass of cold orange juice, and that alien is like, oh my God, I cannot destroy a civilization so incredible. So what I'm saying, let's say I have that belief. Let's say I believe that's the story, that's the only direction the inner earth turns. But I will be, in some sense, this is the thing. You know why so many people tell promises? Because people reveal secrets, because if they don't, they will forget it. That's my firm that's my firm conclusion. That this world, due to its temporary nature, requires an immediacy of existential sensitivity and responsibility. This existential sensitivity and responsibility at its true form is an integrative approach, which means the value of the human being is no longer based on what they look like, what their economical class is. We will stop identifying it that way. We will identifying it based on how aware they are of what they can contribute to while they're alive. Do you see? We have to find a way to inspire genius to step out of the walls of shyness it hides under. You know what that means is there's so many incredibly talented and genius people, kids on this earth, but many of them, they either get delusioned by their desires, okay, they get deceived into certain animalistic instinctual kind of programs. That means the guy who know like, who can like imagine a great artist, instead of great drawing great art, he just chooses to wash dishes all day. You will where we can live honestly as ourselves. The world that we have now, due to cruelty, violence, and competition, and its whole kind of animalistic nature, it can't be. You have to. It's like the reason cruelty has to, chaos has to exist, is because the order needs to evolve. That's simply it. That means Batman, after punching so many people in the face at night, eventually was like, oh my god, I'm getting old, and this pattern of evil people coming and constantly good people fighting them, evil coming, good fighting, evil coming, good fighting. Like, what is this? How long? How long are we gonna brand people in momentary judgments and decide their destinies? I feel reality has to shift. We have to care, and I think this is the phenomena that will occur. We need more sociologists to comment on this. Um, uh, I often imagine, like when I speak, I recognize I'm speaking to the world. And the world is not just human ideas. It's as if the child could not learn language, could religion, science, could anything exist if the child never learned anything? So if the child is learning, it means it is incorporating, which means there's a moment prior. That's where you find where the free will take you, where the reverse engineering or mystical self-inquiry of the current notion of self will take you. You will swim down the river of your memories, and you will recognize the ocean that is everywhere. You will come into a new alignment, a new acknowledgement. Your value will no longer exist just by your body being safe. You will suddenly care for human beings. You will see you have only one lifetime to care for your species. Tell me what other time do you have after we have transitioned? We are no longer just physically bound or oriented creatures. We fall under the orientation of universal intelligence. We gotta love the world before we can save it. That love will mean that love really means your honest self. When you love someone, that means you have found a human being to be in the presence of, where you don't have to, in some sense, be an artifice, an artificial kind of. We don't have time not to be really ourselves in this life. If you notice, if you pay attention, you will figure this out. You will recognize you have been designed to look through your eyes. But if you have never studied your eyes and you've been just learning from what people have said, in some sense, how can you find a new self? Lao Tzu, this Chinese philosopher from 1,000 years ago, he tells us. He says you got to let go of who you are now to be who you were meant to be. You got to let go of who you are. Think of that statement, how intense it is. You got to let go of how you have accepted intelligence to be in a certain format. If that is not enlightenment, then what else could be? We have to protect heaven from the hell that man's mind can create. As if there never existed. Like, this is what I appreciated about certain Zen cultures, certain Zen traditions. They didn't have a hell. They just had earth and heaven. They had a state of a little awareness, very programic, more like life, more nature is running your program rather than you recognizing that the soul of the moment is the eyes of now. That means the mystery, the soul people were looking for, they have been always seeing it. They just don't recognize it. It's not that we have extrasensory perception, it's an extrasensory universe. It's a multidimensional place. But a lot of this multidimensionality is first existing in our subjective domain, in the subjective self. So what I'm saying is, it's like before only it was important for the body of human beings to change biologically. there needed to be a biological evolution. Now the biological evolution, it seems it has slowed down, but because it is so gradual, it's occurring. But what is required now is something that will move the thoughts that we have created on this planet, and it has to come from the free will. That means you can't let go of the ego in this plane of existence, because the sophistication of our communication has required it. As if the ego only exists when you speak. Do you know that? A silent person, nobody knows how their knowledge is contained, so there can't be an ego yet. But when the person speaks, then their personality shows its agreements and disagreements with the world. Pretty much the study of the individual is the study of the collective. They're codependent concepts. It's like when you go, if you're trying to study a drop that is in the ocean, you're studying the ocean, my friend. I find there needs to be a new spirit to the world, a new inspiration in the eyes of the human being. This inspiration, for now, is very limited. It's like most people just want to have a lot of digits when they go to the ATM. Okay, they want to just see a lot of digits. They don't recognize life is not just playing one game. It is recognizing you will go through many games in this life, many ways where the values of life will either come from the environment or they will come from your inner environment where you will give it value. So that means some people, they come and tell you something and then they show you their value, and there's some people who in some sense you extract from the impression you get from them the first character. Okay. So a new human being means a new approach to the life form, which means life is primarily functioning after the data revolution, the information age. Human beings not only attempted to create themselves, they attempted to create something that was beyond themselves. If you notice technology, our whole economical industrial sector is maintained by technologies which in the early times could be seen to be, it's like we were trying to create a giant. Imagine a human being, like a giant human being, okay, like an incredibly giant human being. Now its strength, its speed, its power, so we tried to create these, and we created machinery that would move mountains, or parts of mountains, But what I'm telling you is our technology tried to be what we dreamed it to be, and it wasn't fully the dream, but it went somewhere. It's like believe it or not, trust me, like the talk that you hear is not the talk that I give. The thoughts that come to me, I cannot always share all of them. Okay, so there comes you eventually, through micro decision making, you eventually recognize you have to rely on a natural system. So when you rely on a natural system for the first time, your intelligence doesn't formulate itself, doesn't relate to itself as information or in a certain formation, in a certain relationship with the world. You recognize, you let the relationship happen. So you can't define yourself. Your past cannot define you, and neither your future. It's as if they come and tell the general. General looks at the soldier and says, "Hey, buddy, it doesn't matter how much you want to win the war. We have to just win it." Okay, what that means is we have to. It doesn't matter how much we have dreams that the future is going to be jolly good. It. We have to, in some sense, envision and recognize that waves of the unknown will come. So trust me, my excitement in my childhood, like let's say if life could be divided into two phases, one phase of life is you're in some sense trying to see, trying to know it all, okay? And then you will eventually reach a point where you will start enjoying life as the knower. The knower cannot be defined by the knowledge. That means if I ask you who you are right now and you give me a sentence, like two sentence answer, 2 to 3 sentence answer, I even though me and you both can 100% believe what you said is you, but we will see it cannot, because you will change throughout time. As we live, we change. That's why that's the value of the moment. That means my kind of approach to, even to this YouTube channel, was like, okay, let's think about it. If I am changing all the time, it means my views are changing. It means how my eyes open to the world, or how the world is open to my eyes, is dynamic. Okay, so we have to start finding a more accurate ways to conceptualize the self. We can't just rely on stories. I'm telling you, knowledge doesn't help you. The intellectual man will find some sort of truth, but that truth will melt in his hands. This is why the Sufi wise man told the intellectual pundit, like Dervish pundit, that like, hey buddy, you can't, like, you intellectually just trying to analyze truth, you don't realize it's like you're whipping a dead donkey to run faster. This was a saying, I'm not making this up, this was a saying they would say just the intellectual analysis of truth is like taking a tiger or a lion out of its natural environment, putting it in a cage, then trying to see what a lion truly is in the cage. Do you see that? Is just it is disturbance. Not all dimensions of life need to be disturbed by our species. Our species has to find a new way. And I feel we're going to be, believe it or not, this is going to be hilarious what I'm going to say, but we're going to be um, nature apologists. We're going to be nature apologists. What that means is we have to return to comprehending rhythmic, integrative ways of living with the world, okay? And the world, a part of it, I feel this is the fascinating thing. I feel just like how I don't control my heart. I don't control, like, I don't think, like, okay, heart beat, please, and then the heart beats. The heart beats. It dances its dance. The lungs, in some sense, my breathing is a natural process. I don't formulate thoughts over it, but it happens. So when I recognized this, it was as profound of a recognition as when I had a dream that I could move in the dream. I was like, I woke up and I was like, oh my God. So my physical body was asleep on the bed, my for like body, and my mind was simulating a dream that I could move in the dream. I could go left and right. I had a body in the dream and I could go left and right. So it was as if my dreams showed me there are more bodies than one. And pretty much I woke up and I was shocked because I recognized the mind is simulating itself even when it's awake. So we are in a dream state in reality. We are dreaming over reality. That's what I'm telling you. And this dream is unknown, just like how heartbeat, just we don't think about it, just happens. The dream state functions based on that too. We don't understand. What exploration has always been was finding the new story that truth is telling itself. It's kind of like, that's why I have a playful approach to this YouTube channel, because the world, it doesn't care for philosophy. When it's like, it was crazy. It was like when Friedrich Nietzsche said God is dead, he was giving a warning to all philosophers. He was saying the society's majority is choosing to pay more attention to knowledge than the unknown. We care about known things. We never wonder about how we can update things in unknown ways. We never, it's like people are so worried, but they don't realize with more data before they process things conceptually, it will be a total different result. That means, like, it's like what you're shown, you are. Okay, what you choose to see, you become. What you deny, you hide in your subconscious. What you accept, you allow there not to be a subconscious memory. We are in the waking state as I'm speaking. That means we are intelligent beings that wake up and sleep and wake up and sleep. And so when we're up, we talk, and because we talk, we in some sense have worlds that in some sense we can, it's as if, think of it this way, language is, I say it's a technology because we're using it to explore what the world is. It's, we're applying language to objects. We're applying a subjective framework to an objective existence. This subjective this framework is has naturally come. So every person is creative, because you're going to see creativity is not something you need to get or not. It's a state. It's a state where the way you value life is incredibly inspired by its unknown potential. Sometimes artists, the true artist, the artist draws just to see if it could be done. It's like the guy is trying to break his own world record. So Mr. Within is saying, try to break your own world belief, your recorded belief, your own world record of beliefs. You know, try to break it. You're not a thought. You can choose to dress up in one. You can choose to tell people you're sad, happy, da 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 da. But it's changed. Everybody knows the state of mind is changing all the time. You know, it's very funny. It's like I noticed that there's something occurring in Western society, which is a sort of origination of a psychedelic culture, and I was kind of alarmed at first. But then I realized what it was. It was a kind of, it's as if like imagination is allowed to run as free as a child. This is why we believe when a child says something, the parent kind of are like, ah, oh, kids believing in imaginary friends. But in that child's experience, the world has animated that way. The child's mind, for me, any challenge that comes to you is showing how your mind is evolving. This is why only the fearless learn from the world. Only the fearless get to see the real world. Those who have fear of something, you've just denied yourself access, bro. You know, that's the issue with fear. I said it in a talk a while back. I said, fear kills a man before he has lived. It kills the inner possibility if you listen to it. Fear is just, the way fear should be used is, fear is your greatest teacher. Fear is the world kind of is the world fear sets the limits of expression oftentimes, but also the mind can stand in many ways, just like how you can go walk in many different angles and many different ways. You could just, your physical existence can be animated. Similarly, your mind can be endlessly more able than that, be animated. So the mind can move quicker than the body can, but the mind can move so quick that it becomes an instantaneous witness, as if like, imagine something that goes to the speed of light. We can't see it move anymore. It's moving faster than the light is moving. Okay, so that would be in some sense a suddenly invisibility of the speed. Okay, it would be a sort of non-existence in our own limited room, we seeing something move at the speed of light. When it moves faster than the speed of light, that means it's not going to be even shown in the light. There could be phenomena occurring that is moving at such faster speeds than light that we cannot even know it. There could definitely be things, just like how we didn't know how the brain was the different parts of the brain, like neurologists didn't know how that was. Eventually they came about it, you know, through the history of the tradition of the science. As we evolve beyond the era of advanced communication, era of ideal worship, we will in some sense come to the era of advanced communication. The era of advanced communication means that human beings no longer think they're human beings. They're just recognizing that there's a moment of being here, and this moment of being is an advanced communication of the universal sector. So you are nature's eyes. Okay, that's first thing you realize. So you find contentment with not just how your face looks in the mirror, but with how your intelligence applies as a walks as a character in a story. You have to find contentment with a story, okay, or you will walk in society as a blind man consuming every trash that is thrown your way. This world can be very cruel, ladies and gentlemen. Never get this idea that heaven is a world without chaos. Chaos is a way the world moves. Order is a way the world moves. Whether we relate it to, we give the claim to the design of the hemispheres of the brain as if they're two different hemispheres, and then there's an intersection of chaos and order in the frontal lobe. Regardless of how we approach it, I feel that if everything changes in this life, if human beings are temporary, then their systems of organization, how can I tell you, is like, it's like there's a student that goes to the Shaolin master teacher and says, hey man, what are you doing here? Like the kid goes to the Shaolin master without knowing who the Shaolin master is and says it really quickly. He's like, I'm pretty busy, man. Can you tell me what do you people do here? And the Shaolin master looks strangely at this guy as if this guy has no sense of honor, you know, no sense of respect for a person's presence, you know. And so the Shaolin master says this is a Shaolin school and walks away. Now imagine, as there's a Shaolin Zen story. I say Zen. I mean, you can always see Zen in anything. You know, Zen is just an acknowledgement of an underlying emptiness in the beauty of the phenomenon. So what happens is there's another kid who goes to this master as if the kid first had to get the permission of his parents. His father was his first master. He had to get his lessons and, in some sense, get his permission. After he had that mentor, the child suddenly was allowed, and the child goes there. His dad takes him, and the child does something where even the dad is surprised, and and the Shaolin master is surprised too. The child in front of his dad and the Shaolin master suddenly bows. Okay, he bows with his hands on the ground and his head kneeling on the ground to the Shaolin master and says, "Please accept me in your Shaolin school." And he respects the guy with the proper title, like Shifu, you know, or sensei or whatever. You know, I don't know the exact term. And so the Shaolin master looks at this kid and looks at the father, and the father looks at the kid and looks at the Shaolin master, and the father and the Shaolin master both smile. Okay, and the Shaolin master says, "Get up," you know, like at ease, you know. And so the kid gets up and he says, "Your first training. Go and discover the whole environment and see what all the buildings and where everything is." And the kid runs off, and the Shaolin master looks at the father and it's like, all right, this kid's part of the school, man. You know, and the father's like, all right, I'm gonna go back being a blacksmith in an unevolved village. You know, and so and so what happens is many years pass, and there's two sides to the coin of the story. What that means is I'm going to tell you what happens to the kid in the Shaolin school, and the kid, where the story is the kid returns. Okay, so let me say it like this. Let's start off with the kid. The father leaves. The kid, after learning the location and everything, and finding an awareness and alertness, you know, in some sense, learns the basics and goes through a sort of basic training. Then, suddenly one day, in the middle of this kid's normal training, the Shaolin master, goes to the kid and says, your training will differ from now on. You have to go inside this room, you know, kind of like as if it's something that come to the alertness of the Zen master. the Shaolin master. And what he does is, by the way, Shaolin monks are taught Zen. It's very important to fighting. A Zen mind can never lose a battle. Pretty much a clear mind. To continue, um, sorry guys, my attention went to a bunch of things for a moment. Um, Pretty much what happens is the kid is told to sit in a room. The Shaolin master puts buckets of water in front of him and says you got to slap the surface of the water with your palm, and that's your only training. And just like that guy back in the day in military practices had to peel like 100 potatoes, you know this kid had to every day for the next couple years afterward in the story constantly just every day slap the surface of this water. All right, that kid, like his mind and everything went through like its own workout of like holy shit every day. And the kid thought for the longest time, even like till like even this point in the story, the kid has this impression like what a asshole like this teacher. Like all the other Shaolin people, like the way I kind of entered, the kid's like thinking to himself, he's like, this guy doesn't understand. I want to be the greatest warrior here, but he's just put me in a room to kind of slap water all day. Like, what is this? What is this madness? Okay. And so what happens is that the kid is now grown, and it's been like, I don't know, 6 years or 7 years or something. And the kid's going back home. He goes back home and he's dressed in his proper Shaolin monk gear and whatnot. Like he's an official student, and the Shaolin monk's got a break or something. He's taking a Shaolin monk sabbatical. And so this kid goes home and he's frustrated. He's like, "Wow, what happened in these 7 years?" As he's walking home, and eventually goes home and he's embraced by his huge family. This for the purpose of the story, his family is like he has a lot of siblings and whatnot. And so what happens is his father, and he's the oldest kid in the family, and suddenly the father goes in there, right? Brings the kid and puts him at the front of the table where the father usually sits, and tells his son to sit there today, and says, my son is a Shaolin warrior and has returned. Welcome home, son. Like something like that, right? And they're all sitting at the table fascinated, and the father and the mother are talking to him, and he's being very kind and graceful in his response. And suddenly his father, because he sees the whole family's wondering, says, son, before we serve dinner, you know, can you just show us something from the Shaolin monk school you've learned? Okay? And so this kid is like, they want to know what I did. Sorry, something like that. The question was like, the parents want to know, okay, what happened? Like, what did you learn or something? You know? Show us the true power of a Shaolin monk, something. Those are strict parents. And no, the parents are, of course, very nice and whatnot. But anyways, so this kid gets frustrated, and suddenly the second oldest brother realizes the oldest brother who the family has disappeared and come back. It's like something's going on, and there's some anger or frustration. And suddenly the kid gets angry because in his mind he's like, for 7 years I slapped water. And he's like, I'm going to tell him. And in his mind he gets angry, and his hand moves quicker than before he could even say anything. And he just slaps the table as he gets up. And his hand is so powerful, that slap of the table was so powerful that it breaks that chunk of the table. Okay, and his father, let's say, wasn't a blacksmith, was a carpenter, so it was a thick table. It was a great table, you know? And so it's like in that moment where the whole family gets up and it's like, whoa, about the action. It was about the skill that was being cultivated. Do you see? It doesn't matter if you're slapping water or you're punching like something else. You will eventually recognize you can master anything through concentration. But what concentration is it is a testament to your honesty having to live in a world that constantly wants to systemize things. It's not just people who come to your door and knock and try to advertise their religious group. It's not just people at the door, or religious or political group or whatever, real estate company or whatever. It's not those kind of people that just come to the door of your house, you know? It is every idea of the world that will require you to exchange its existence and your attention for your access to it. That is the world. It's an exchange kind of world. Where it's funny. It's like before money and currency, before we were using currency, it was a bartering system. They would trade. People would trade stuff. He's like, "Yo, man, I found a cool stick. You found a cool rock. Let's trade." You know. So that is what I'm trying to convince this kind of world of ours, that there is a spear we must throw in an unknown sky. We must attempt the new. So for me, the past generations must respond as silent guardians of the future generations. You cannot tell them what to do, but you take responsibility for the life that you're aware of. Begins from a personal dimension. Eventually, you see the value of the person is actually the value of the collective. That's a cool moment. That's a cool moment when you suddenly no longer desire exists because you feel you're more valuable than others. Rudeness, cruelty, violence, all of these exist because one entity thinks it's superior. Yo, I'm better. It's like this. They're playing the better game. It's like kind of like how gorillas would kind of hit their chest in an alpha male kind of way. Like, oh, whichever animal made the loudest noise, the other animals were like, okay, there's something up with that. I'm not gonna fucking deal with that. So the lion automatically became king because it had the most deadliest weapon. Okay, it had pretty much a kind of uh, it had the most fiercest attack. And for me, it's like, what's funny? The personal responsibility. Who Jordan Peterson, I stand sometimes in incredible awe and honor of what he's doing. So Jordan Peterson is for me, he's the attempt to show the future generations the past is not blind. That is Jordan Peterson in a statement, I would say. For me, it's as if like not only the chains of that are not only should slavery be eradicated. Eradication means the slavery, the word is like a stick that we're using to create this sort of fire. We're trying to destroy an inefficient pattern in the civilization. And anything that inhibits, limits another human being, right now I'm speaking, whoever listening to you, anything you're doing that is limiting another being's reality is a disservice to your species. That's it. It's a disservice to evolution. That means what is more foolish than not caring for the evolution of humanity? Tell me. Please tell me. What is more foolish? It's not just we are alive once. The world we are seeing is alive once as well. And ideas can live longer than people. Why else would I be speaking, guys? I was curious to try. I saw what if every person began sharing what they are really seeing. And what would the world do with honesty? What would a world of lies do with an honest citizen? You know what it will do? It will either listen to it if it's smart. If it doesn't, it will fail. It will not be, and you got to see, it doesn't matter what the institution is, it is the intentions of how the intelligence behind that institution moves. And if the intention is blind, oh man, it's like a fool who's controlling the world, and we all have to just kind of go with that program. We have to liberate reality first from ourselves, then from the world. You got to free yourself from your beliefs. You got to recognize you cannot even define a human being's intelligence because it's dynamic. It's like trying to explain horse riding to someone. Regardless of the words you find, they have to ride. And for me, intelligence is an attempt. It's this constant rookie mistake. That's how intelligence is at its full peak. It's the mistake, the rookie mistake that had the wisdom of the risk the rookie was taking. You have to live life. This living has to do with how you define the values, and the values has to do with how far you see, and how far that sight is in some sense interpretable data for you. Do you know there's so many things that are occurring on this current planet we don't have words invented for yet? We haven't created words for. That's my concept where I call it. That's like I say it's why Mr. Within looked at civilization and said now is the time to acknowledge the language threshold, the limits of language. Because Ludwig Wittgenstein even said the limits of my language are the limits of my world. And the world is a dynamic living phenomena. It has to be preserved that way, or it will be too static. It will be too convinced by an unchanging story when change is the law of the world. The only thing that doesn't change, believe it or not, is change. That's an enlightenment riddle, you know. You snap out of the duality that was the inner shackle, that was the shackle of your mind, the fact that you thought you were bad or you were good. These are delusions. You are attributeless because your attention modifies based on its maneuverance. So how you live your day has to do with how you moved. This is why it is very. I could totally understand the complexity that psychologists and therapists have to deal with when they have to. In some sense, I saw Jordan Peterson kind of bring shine a light onto this. That he was saying it's incredibly complex to kind of deal with someone who has this victim mentality because they feel it was their free will that went into that chaotic condition and was destroyed by it, like their inner value was destroyed. Because when the world happens to you and it moves past that comfortable space of free will, you will in some sense become violent. Trust me, it's like we are so blind in regards to the hollowness of our egos, we don't recognize they're hollow, so we think we are them. Even Marcus Aurelius had this quote where he said the soul is dyed with the colors of its thoughts. So you don't understand. There's never a need to fight because people can change their mind, and whether they like it or not, minds change. The issue is we don't recognize we can change it in an instant. So I'm telling you this. Imagine the world's our government. When I speak, I'm speaking in a global context. What I mean by that is I'm in my mind, the nations are not separated. They never were. The world was never various different places. There were just various patterns of intelligence moving in different parts of the planet because they were different responses. That means the secret, we can never know if consciousness is attributeless or it has attributes. We will never know. But because we can never know, it means the unknown exists. So in some sense, we know that it is unknown. So because we know it is unknown, we find ourselves, the sense of self will eventually evaporate It will evaporate in a sort of recognition that the dream and the reality can only exist in the here and now. What are people thinking that language, it's funny, it's like language starts wars, but when we look at what language is, it's the users. It's like war is when, so this is kind of like savage what I'm going to say, but it was like, it was an exercise that humanity had to go through, perhaps. So guys, I gotta, believe it or not, end off the topic because I'm on my balcony and there's too much bug activity, like insects and stuff. So I'm gonna go inside because the collision of them with my face during this talk has been a nuisance, you know. I hope that you recognize, of course, some things in reality will never be embraced. But I feel we should have a sort of ultimate freedom of the individual, which will be the same outcome of the world because the individual defines the world and then becomes it. We are the sight that is now. We are just, a term I created for it, we are seeing emptiness. We are empty seeing. We are consciousness in matter as a dynamic phenomena. And our contentment with this notion will start our own search. That means, this is what Mr. Within is saying, don't believe anything, but explore until you see beyond your own beliefs. That means reverse engineer. Don't go looking for knowledge. Look at yourself. Look at evolve the container of knowledge, and new worlds will pour into the spotlight of attention any moment. It's that's the world we are. I hope this talk has served you. Much blessings and namaste.